It's Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, so you know what that means. It's time for another episode of #Event Icons, presented by Endless Events, the show where you get to ask the icons of the events industry anything. So, you might be wondering, how do you get to ask questions? All you have to do is use the question panel on the right of GoToWebinar to submit your questions. Or you can hop on Twitter to submit your questions with the #EventIcons. We'll be answering your questions live during the entire show. Before we get started, the more people we have watching, the better conversation we can have. So please help share #EventIcons on Twitter and Facebook. Just tell your friends to watch at www.event-icons.com. Now, without any further delay, this is #EventIcons with your hosts, Will Curran of Endless Events, Laura Lopez of Social Tables, and Brandt Krueger of Event Technology Consulting.
It's so amazing when we get to put all the hosts on the show, and we just get to have so much fun during that intro. It was so good, and as Kathy Myers in the audience says, I think I tune in just to watch you all dance. So we really appreciate that. We work really hard on our moves every week.
That's the only reason we do the show.
Really do.
Really, the only reason we do the show is for that intro and the outro.
Yeah.
So today's episode's a little bit different than usual. We are formally welcoming the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Brandt Krueger, to the show as a host.
Hey.
As you saw in the episode, you may remember him from his 17,000 different appearances he's made on the show now, as either a guest host, as an official guest, and now joining us as an official host of the show. So we realized we haven't done a one-on-one get-to-know Brandt, who is Brandt, kind of episode, so we figured we want to do something a little bit different. Laura, is there anything you want to kind of add to what we're going to talk about today and the kind of fun that we're going to have today?
No, it's just going to be insane. So whip out your Twitter. I'm sure Brandt's going to drop some knowledge bombs all day today. So it's going to be good. It's going to be a good episode. Yeah.
Literally knowledge bombs, and we might hear some sound effect bombs too. We have queued up the music and the sound effects ready for this week's episode.
We were having some good fun in the pre-show, fiddling around with my sound library.
So get prepared for the epic sound effects. Brandt's just trying to find a good one for everything that we're going to say. So we're going to have some fun with this one. For those who are curious, feel free to ask us anything about the show. Obviously, ask Brandt anything as well. We're going to grill him with some really hard questions, and I know you guys have it ready for him. So let's kick it off, though. Brandt, you've explained this probably 15 different times, but if you want to maybe give a little bit of a different iteration on it this time, what got you in the events industry, and like kind of what got you to today, and maybe if you want to spin it too on the podcasting side of things, like why did we obviously want you to be on the show and how you got involved in podcasting?
Well, that last one's the hardest one. I have no idea why you want me to be on the part of the show. That I cannot answer. But as to the rest of it, and yeah, obviously I've been on a few times now, but it's. I got into the industry about 20 years ago, and it was, like a lot of people, kind of fell into it. I mean, I had a theater background, and was working for a stage lighting company, a rental company that rented lights to mainly theaters around town. But there was this old kind of hippie guy that would come in and rent lights from time to time and small sound systems, and he was working mainly on corporate events. So he's this like old 1960s sound guy. And but he had worked his way into doing small sound and light packages for corporate events. And when I left that place, his was the only number that I took out of the Rolodex. And so I started freelancing for him and did that for about a year or so and got picked up. It was actually the first event that they sent me out on my own, that he trusted me to actually go out and do on my own. It was an out-of-town event, and it was for the company that I wound up working for the next 20 years, and they kind of stole me away from him. So yeah, I worked for an event production company out of Minneapolis called Metro Connections for the next 18 years after that, and about two and a half years ago went out on my own. Left on good terms, just kind of one of those, oh yes, get the soundtrack going. left on good terms, and still do a fair amount of freelance work for them. But it's been a fun experience now, kind of being out on my own. It's kind of the third generation of my event prof experience.
And what got you, talk a little bit about your history of Event Alley, moved into being a host of Gather Geeks. You want to talk a little bit about that? By the way, sorry, I had to play the epic, that we were talking about the song before the show, about how this is the most epic storytelling song ever, so I thought it was fitting.
So let's let that bed, and then as it starts to build, I'll try and time it. But I think, unfortunately, every time I talk, it mutes the music. So it's okay. Because of the way that GoToWebinar is trying to be helpful in that aspect. It does get in the way of doing epic storytelling, unfortunately. I've been listening to podcasts for probably 6 or 7 years, maybe even longer than that. It was definitely while my oldest daughter was still pretty young, and I was listening on my BlackBerry Storm to podcasts. Yeah, and started listening to some of the podcast that was put on by a guy named Leo Laporte. He has a whole network of podcasts now at this point from twit.tv. And I got into it because, having a small child in the house, you just don't have as much time to do reading and things like that. And so I loved this new world that was opening up to me of being able to just listen to podcasts and absorb information passively while you're doing other things. So while you're doing the dishes, while you're mowing the lawn, while you're bouncing a small baby in your hands because they won't go to sleep, you can listen to a podcast and still keep up on the latest technology trends and things like that. And that kind of re-energized me even more into technology and what the latest trends are. And I thought, man, this is something I'd really like to do. But who's got the time? Who's got the time to, especially a weekly podcast? Who's got the time for that? What kind of loser can do that? And
not us.
So, and I'd actually talked about it.
Definitely not us.
I talked about it to friends of mine and been like, man, I'd love to do a podcast kind of thing. And Event Alley, Lindsay Rosenthal and Liz King, now Liz Caruso, because she just got married.
Congrats, Liz.
Started Event Alley as a podcast, and I was like, no, my dream is being stolen away. But fortunately for me, after about a year, Liz decided that that's not for me. I'm gonna leave, and so Lindsay brought on myself and Tahira and Dean as co-hosts of the podcast, and we did that for about a year. And at the end of that, we just kind of started to fizzle away. But I was fortunate right after that to be picked up by the Gather Geeks podcast. So David Adler from BizBash approached me and was like, hey, we're still interested in doing a podcast? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. So we worked on that for about a year, and then we kind of went our separate ways on that one as well. And they've moved on to make it much more BizBash centric. So it's just David and Beth Kormanik. So rather than having us as external hosts, myself and Audrey. Hi, Audrey, if you're out there. And so, but I'd started to watch Event Icons, and so I really liked the shows that I always enjoyed doing the most were the ones that were more panel discussions, roundtables, just chatting, rather than kind of the one-on-one interviews. Let's get multiple people, multiple opinions, pick a topic and go around. And so what I like about this show is it's very conversational. It's just us. We're just hanging out, and we happen to be recording it. And it's as close as you can get to just putting a camera in the middle of a table and having dinner, which I like those television shows too. Like we should think about doing that for like a live shot or something. Just
like
once
eating.
We get into once we get like a 360 camera and we can just like do a 360 live stream, plop that down in the middle of a bar table. Like
I don't know if everyone's ready to see me eat though. I just snarf food down. So I'm just like, I'm not beautiful when I eat.
That's true. I've seen it. The ham biscuit situation. Yeah, yeah. Ham biscuits. IMEX. What was the name of that restaurant? Because if you
yeah, somewhere in the
sands. By the way, if you ever can get to whatever that restaurant was and have the ham biscuits, you should.
Your stomach will appreciate it, but then in the morning
simultaneously love you and hate you. Yes.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, so that's what brought me here. So it's, you know, once I, you know, kind of departed, you know, went separate ways with Gather Geeks, I approached Will and was like, hey, man, you know, I'd love to be a part of the show. And and now the
of
music.
course, we said yes.
Well, it always helps to have somebody who's been on the show previously.
Yeah, so like Laura was a guest host and was a guest on the show, and then you know I forced her when I was in Panama to host the show, and then we said, okay, you're gonna be an official host now.
Sweet. That's how we reel them in, you know.
So for all you people who have been on the show multiple times, we're coming for you.
Yeah. You're going to be the next co-host.
There was a guest speaker named Mike Abershoff, who is a pretty good keynote speaker, but he always starts it with, if you've seen this show more than 6 times, you're qualified to give it. So I think it's probably the same thing with Event Icons. If you've been on it at least 6 times, you're qualified as a host.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it.
Real
quick, before Laura, before you ask the next question, I did have to play this song for you.
Oh, dear.
I could have danced on the sun, but my world came undone.
Sad Irish music. All right, now that that's out of the way.
Yeah. I love it. If anybody has a request, please feel free to put those in the chat box. We will try and
Hopefully this sounds okay.
Like a simultaneous DJ session too. It'd be great.
And since I'm not hosting,
there are 2 DJs as hosts right now, so watch out.
Yes, technically, yes. Bray, here's a question for you. So you fell into the events industry, but if you weren't in the events business, do you have an idea of what you would be doing instead? Or did you have a dream job?
DJ.
Space pirate. Space pirate. Definitely space pirate. It's it's always interesting to kind of go back through your life, right, and look at those big crossroad moments. You know, I was at the time when I was working for that theater company or a theater rental house, I was still doing shows, so I was doing lighting design and stuff like that for theater shows. So who knows where that would have gone had I not been asked to leave that particular company. You know, what direction my life would have gone.
Who knows? He left that one on a cliffhanger.
Well, I know.
Space pirate.
Space pirate.
Probably space pirate.
If you were a space pirate, what would be the first planet you would take over?
Oh.
Well, I mean, Mars is the obvious answer, but you know.
Is Mars the only one where you could actually sustain life? Where's the one? There's a couple with water sources.
That's the closest one.
Closest one. The other ones you can travel for a while, right?
Right. And by the way, they've actually, if you've watched the movie The Martian, the Potato Council has actually shown that you can actually raise potatoes in a Martian-like environment. So they have tested that. It does work. You can look it up.
But then you wouldn't have great explosions and singeing of hair.
Exactly. Well, I mean, yeah, it's in Martian soil, and I'm sure there would have to be fertilizer involved and things like that. But in theory, it worked. Fun fact.
All right, so.
You know it all.
Oh my gosh, the sound effects. That's just the start of them. So, look, okay, we got some requests coming in already through the air. I think we get more requests now than we do questions for this episode. So, while we're going through and I queue up this next request, is you know, we joining Event Icons, obviously you've been a big fan, you've been on the show multiple times. I'd love to know, what are your kind of thoughts as far as where you see the show going, the kind of guests you want to see on, what are you hoping that we can happen in the, you know, the next you know, let's say 9 months or 12 months of the show?
Well, I think, you know what, it's a terrible show, and I think we should just cancel it right now.
This is actually our very last show.
It's hard to say.
Thanks for saying this.
No, honestly, the things that I really enjoy is the diversity of people. You know, I mean, it's with having, you know, kind of the 3 of us coming from kind of somewhat different worlds, and the number of people that have been reaching out and saying they'd like to be a part of the show. You know, we're able to get into a lot of different topics, and not just AV and technology from our point of view, but a lot of other topics as well. Things that I would like to see us get into would be some of the more like general business skill type stuff. Just general productivity hacks, not specific to events necessarily, but marketing and things like that are going to be general. A lot of event planners are independent, business owners. They're just 1 and 2 person shops or even 40 or less, maybe on the larger side. So, what can we add as far as, picking up those kind of general business skills? And then the other thing that I'd really like to see is on-location stuff. I mean, I was kind of joking about the camera on the bar kind of thing, but those are the things that I always enjoyed as well from some of the other shows is, can we get out to like an IMEX or something like that and broadcast live? And do a show from IMEX, do a show from IMEX Frankfurt, do a show from NAB.
Sure.
Find some of these shows that maybe aren't shows necessarily that a lot of event planners might go to, but might be able to get benefit from, like NAB, where there's a lot of technology there that's being released, like the Consumer Electronics Show. And try and find the trends that are coming down the way that they're going to have to be paying attention to, but not necessarily it's going to be in their face in the immediate future.
I love it. It's like it's nice when you finish a question. We have a little bit of a musical break in between. It's great that you say the IMEX thing too, because for those who don't know, we do an episode of IMEX, and we would love to do more of them. But you can look forward. Here's a teaser for future episodes. We're getting asked to share more about our future episodes. You can look forward to seeing us live at IMEX again this year. It is on the schedule, so I'm just going to give you a date now for October 11th. It's far way away. Put it on your calendar, but we're going to be doing live from IMEX, so your chance again, we're going to do a similar style where we bring in as many people as fast as we can, so you'll get to meet and see everyone and ask questions of everyone. So
I was literally watching that episode from the other side of the hall on the bad Wi-Fi, like trying to watch and stream while I waited for some of my walk-up one-on-one appointments. I was just like, oh, I'll just tune in and see what's going on. Okay, hey, this is pretty good.
pretty awesome.
If you haven't seen the episode, you should definitely watch it.
Yeah, this time we're going to make sure Laura's going to be there this year.
Yeah,
right, Laura?
I hope. Yeah.
We're looking at you, social tables. Make sure Laura has time off to come in to go IMAX.
Or we'll give you a stern look.
Yes, please.
So she can come enjoy the ham biscuit squad. Laura,
I need to have this ham biscuit. It's legendary at this point.
Is it delicious and legendary?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna look it up on Yelp and see just how legendary it is.
Oh my
and why is it so messy? Why is it messy to eat? Is it because you guys have beer?
No, I don't think it's that messy. It wasn't that messy.
It's a biscuit and ham, okay. So you can imagine there's no nutritional value.
Yeah.
Okay. No nutritional value at all.
All right. I'm gonna Google it. All right. So, Brandt, so you know a ton about AV. I think one of the previous episodes that we had you on was how to save a shit ton on AV. So, you know, we have a lot of planners who tune into the show, and they need to know about the basics of AV. So how can they learn the basics of AV, and why should they care to learn the basics?
It's a bit of a chicken and egg problem in that a lot of, even before there were a lot of people that just kind of fell into the business, as we've talked about already. But now, as hospitality management and event management programs have started to become more popular, a lot of those still aren't teaching some kind of basic AV 101. So even today, where we have, actual college graduate courses on, how to become an event person, there's still kind of a gap in the knowledge of AV 101 stuff. And, one of the original reasons when I first started reaching out to Will was because he was doing a lot of this kind of transparency stuff of here's why things cost the way that they do, and here's the, some creative things you can do with lighting that won't break your budget. And so that's been something that I've been trying to do for about 5 years or so now, is is bring a little transparency to the AV world. Bring a little, this is, why things cost the way they cost, the difference between a PAR and a LECO and all that kind of stuff. And that's how I actually got involved with the Event Leadership Institute, teaching classes, basically AV 101 type classes for technical meeting production. And that's been an incredibly rewarding experience because it's, whether it's people that have been in the business for 5 years or 30 years, there seems to be this continuing gap in their knowledge. And it doesn't take a lot. It's not rocket science. It really isn't. People sometimes, when it comes to technology, the eyes glaze over and, oh, I could never learn that. But it really, you're a lot smarter than you think you are. And it's not that complicated. So a little bit of AV 101 stuff has the potential to save you tens of thousands of dollars in just kind of knowing the difference between lights and making sure that you're getting the kind of rig that you think you need.
I agree.
So here's a fun fact. I did marching band in high school.
What?
And, yeah.
Get out. What'd you play? Wait, what'd you play?
I played clarinet.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
But anyways, so I think what Brandt is saying is just, it's gospel, because one of the things that my band teacher used to say, and his name was Mr. Stokes. I know he's definitely not watching this, but props to Mr. Stokes.
You never know.
That would be so weird if he's watching this. But he always used to say, for matters that involve you, you have no excuse to be clueless. And I think that in the planning world, you're dealing with AV. They're not expecting you to be an AV technician, because the two things you just threw out there, the Pico, Plinko, something or other, I don't even know. I don't know AV. I need to take your course. It's not so much that you need to be an AV technician or basically have a double life knowing all that stuff about AV, but knowing just the basics, I think, help people put on better events, and that's what their clients want, and that's what the attendees want. So I think it's good having that view. So
I love it. I've personally taken Brandt's course as a requirement by Brandt, and it is actually, I mean, to be honest,
I made you take it.
Yeah. I was just more curious to see like how Brandt was gonna phrase things too, and I mean, shout out to everyone who is watching. If you haven't taken Brandt's course, at least go check it out. Watch like the trailer in it. If you feel like, hey, this isn't for me, I'd highly recommend it. It's really affordable, in my opinion, for the amount of education that you get from it. I mean, you're gonna make that money back in just savings. Like basically, you'll probably make back the course cost in just the savings next time you talk to your AV company. So, highly recommend it. Really, really great class. Speaking of the ELI class, also, real quick before I totally forget, Megan Powers in the house in the audience says she loved the IMAX show. She was on the show as well, so just a first-hand testimonial that it was awesome. So everyone tune in that IMAX episode on October 11th. Promo for future episodes that are months away. But speaking of ELI, as I go back on topic, what's the most common thing that you get asked as far as topics that you teach? Maybe it's something you already do teach and they didn't know existed, or is there something that you get requested a lot that you're like, man, I really wish we should teach this?
Well, I mean, we've tried to incorporate those topics as they come along. So if it seems like we're getting asked a lot about a certain subject, and so just last year we actually took it from a 4-week course to a 5-week course and expanded and added a lot of topics in there. But I mean, in general, as I go around, the biggest fear, I would say, is that people just think or are worried they're getting ripped off, and so they kind of flip to the last page and look at the really large number and sign and cross their fingers and hope. And so a lot of times that's just kind of, I just want to learn a little bit more so that I don't feel like I'm getting ripped off. And the other thing is that, especially with planners that have some experience, they've picked up little bits and chunks. So there is no like one thing that people are, might be feeling a little lacking in, because different people have picked up different chunks. And so, someone might have picked up a little bit more lighting, someone might have picked up a little more audio, someone might have a print background, so they're more cool with PowerPoint and graphics and stuff like that. So it really is all over the map. And I say it like 100 times during the course. Don't feel bad about asking questions, because I guarantee I've heard it before. And it's not a big deal. So there literally are no stupid questions except for, why should I be taking this course? That's
so
a stupid question.
so this is gonna sound really, really horrible coming from the fellow AV guy, but our question follow up to that is why is it important for people to not feel like they're gonna get ripped off? Obviously, I know.
Well, no one wants to feel like they're being ripped off, so that's the core of why I would say it was important. But I mean, 99% of AV companies are not trying to rip you off, right? It's not, and I think we talked about this in the one where we had John on and we were talking about it, that most of the time when they're overbidding, they're giving you more equipment than you might need, it's because they're not entirely sure that you know what you need. And so the more you're able to have that conversation and say, no, seriously, we're only going to need this number of mics, we're only going to need this many lights, that kind of thing, the more accurate your bids are going to be, and it's not going to be more than what you need. There's always going to be in any business a very small percentage of people, though, that will actively try and take advantage of that. An ignorant audience is someone that you can take advantage of. So I try and focus on not things like model numbers and stuff like that, but more just the generalities of how things work. So if you're, in a situation where you look at your bid and you don't know what something is, you can ask, they'll give you an answer, and that answer will either make sense or it won't make any sense, and then you need to go back at them and say, okay, that projector is probably not going to be bright enough. I don't know that we really need that many speakers for that size of a room, those kinds of things. So when you're more confident in kind of the 101 stuff, at least then you're going to know when you're getting a legitimate answer versus a sketchy answer. Have I told the Voice of God story, the Voice of God box story?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so.
So, and this is an example of an perhaps unscrupulous AV company. So, it was a new client for us when I was at the event production company, and I was doing the Voice of God stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome. And during the lunch break,
answer all of your questions like that from now on.
I'm going to answer my question like a voice of God. Thank you. And at the lunch break, the client comes up to us and says, "So, is that was you?" And I said, "Yeah, it was me." And that was running through a microphone, yeah. And did it go through something? No. I mean, it's just a microphone patched into the soundboard, and maybe they adjusted the equalizer or something along those lines. Okay, so it's not going through like a Voice of God box. And we all kind of looked at each other and went, no, and made the look that Laura's making right now of, what? And she's like, I knew it. And their previous AV provider had a line item on the bill that said Voice of God box, $300 a day. Now, I can think of a lot of pieces of equipment that might be, that internally, it's an EQ or something like that, that internally they would refer to it as the Voice of God box. But to put that on someone's bill as Voice of God box, and then to have her not want to question it because she wasn't sure what it is a perfect example of why because all she needed to do is say, what is that? And their answer would either, like I said, it would either make sense and be like, oh, that's an equalizer. We just kind of call it in-house. It's the Voice of God box. It's in the back rack. It makes people sound really good. Okay, do I need it? Then the conversation can happen. Or they go, it's a box that makes stuff
sound godly.
Good. At which point then you run screaming from the room. So this is just an example of, if you've got a little bit of knowledge, you can question those types of things.
Interesting. Well, I almost equate it similarly to like a car dealership or like the car mechanic, right? Is that, you can generally understand some basic ideas of how a car works, and, they could easily say, oh yeah, that's the mufflerizer, and that needs to be replaced. That's going to be
the muffler fluid is very low. You need to replace your muffler fluid.
Yeah, and if you're like, I've never heard of that before, you'll probably be able to catch them in a lie. But if you just accept everything they say as gospel, then then bad things are going to happen. So
right. Yeah.
I'm super excited about this next question. So this is coming from Twitter. Twitter wants to know, what is one thing about Brandt that nobody knows?
He is secretly Kanye West, everyone.
Like,
No, I mean I've announced it publicly, but a lot of people still don't know. I'm actually running for city council in my
wow.
just south of Minneapolis suburb called Richfield. So it's something that kind of happened very quickly. It's a special election, so literally it's like a 1-month campaign, and then it will either work or it won't. And so so that's been kind of fun. It's been a crazy few weeks, and it's going to be a crazy another month. But it's really exciting, and I really encourage anybody who's at all interested in politics, get involved in local politics, because it's very rewarding. I mean, just sitting down and having coffee conversations. I've met with every school board member, every sitting city council member, a lot of past city council members, the police chief, the fire chief, and most people don't get a chance to do that. And it makes you feel connected to your community in a way that's really hard to describe. So I highly encourage it. If you're, at all unhappy with the state of politics in the world, get involved. Get involved, especially on the local level. It's surprisingly easy to get involved.
If you're elected, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, Laura, you probably have a better question than I do.
If you're elected, what's something that you hope to change that's on your list?
Yeah, well, I mean, the biggest thing is like I said, I had a lot of conversations with a lot of people, and pretty pan-political too. I mean, like across the political spectrum, and age and demographics and things like that. And what was really surprising to me is how often the conversation came back to communication, and that the city's just not doing as good of a job as it could be. I'm being really careful to not say bad job, because I've already offended some of the folks at the city by running on this. But we could be doing a better job of communication. We've got major construction projects that the residents aren't feeling are being communicated promptly, and what's going on and when. And I understand the city frustration. Hey, we've been working on this for 7 years. We've had umpteen million open houses, that kind of thing. And now you're upset. I understand that frustration as well. But it doesn't change the fact that people are just hearing about it and are upset about it. So what can we be doing to be better about that, and pushing things out on Facebook and where people are? And then I'm kind of a bridge generation. I'm perfectly happy sitting down with coffee, coffee table, or being on Facebook Live and social media. So I'm hoping to be able to spread, because we've got a very diverse age-wise community as well, with a lot of baby boomers that are retiring and thinking about leaving the city, and and we want to be able to address their needs as well. How's that for a spiel?
Wow, you would get my vote if I lived in Richland. You get my vote. Richfield. There's a Richmond in Virginia, so that's.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I was like, "Is that Virginia?"
Yeah.
So what's the number one skill that you've had to develop that you didn't think that you didn't think that you had to develop, or that you definitely didn't have, that you're like, I really had to work on this since you've started doing this?
Well, I mean, teaching chops are one thing. I mean, it's I've had some public speaking and debate and theater and stuff like that in high school and college, but after that, there was an 18-year gap of speaking in front of people. So it was just getting used to that, and same with the podcasts and stuff like that. Getting back into the vibe of public speaking and being able to speak in front of a room full of people. And I remember the first ELI gig that I did that was a live, like, in-person gig. I have a vivid memory as I was about to turn around and start. I had picked up a cup of tea, and my hand was just like shaking, and I kind of slowly like put the tea down. Okay, hi everybody, welcome, that kind of thing. So I mean, so teaching chops and just being in front of people for hours on end. Some of the master classes that I do are all day long. And being able to try and keep people engaged and active and involved, especially after lunch, and the coffee starts to wear off and people start to drift off, and there's not a whole lot you can do, but get people moving and energized, and okay, time to wake up and stand up and move around, kind of stuff. So that's been one of the things. Yeah.
By the way, Megan in the audience says that she says, "Oh, come on, Brandt, I know you're totally doing it for the money."
Well, yeah. I'm not doing it for the exposure. That's just for Megan. We have a running conversation about doing things for the exposure, and I told her once that I feed my kids exposure. It goes well with peanut butter. It's great. Yeah, they love it. Bit like sawdust, but.
To go back to the AV side, I saw this question come in, and I personally wanted to ask it because I think these stories are always so great. What's the biggest AV mishap you've ever seen, other than someone asking for a Voice of God box?
Well, mishaps are just like, ew. I mean, there's also things. I mean, sometimes there's things that happen just out of your control, right? I mean, there's things that are accidents and oopses. I mean, down at the Connect conference, I was speaking down there. This is totally out of everyone's control. Somebody literally drove a truck into one of the like electrical way stations nearby, and so like the whole thing went down, and they went into backup lighting, and it took them a while to get the AV. And so, projector goes down without doing a full power down. Well, as you know, it takes a while for those things to come back up. So a lot of times it's stuff that happens that's out of your control. And so because obviously as AV professionals, we're trying to eliminate all of those whoopsies as much as possible. So more often than not, I'll tell you mine. I mean, my biggest whoopsie in the AV department.
Which, by the way, this is a big vulnerable moment. Most AV guys are not willing to admit that they made a mistake.
Oh, I love this story because it's an example of where you try to do the right thing, but you forget something stupid. So wireless microphones all have different frequencies, and so frequently when you're in like a big convention center or something like that, you have to go around to other events and say, hey, what frequencies are you using? What frequencies am I using? We make sure that nobody's on the same frequencies. And so I was doing a really kind of small, maybe 20, 30 person thing, but we were next door to a big like Cisco meeting. And so we like did the polite thing, the good neighbor thing, and we went next door and said, okay, these are the frequencies we're using on our wireless. What ones are you using? Great. Okay, good. No problem. So, we're all done setting up, and I'm clicking through the presenter's slides just to make sure they look all right. And I'm clicking through, and all of a sudden, a guy dressed in blacks, comes around the corner. He's like, hey, are you using a Perfect Q in here? The wireless presenter remote?
Oh, get out.
And I said, yep. I said, yeah. I was just clicking through some slides. He's like, yeah.
I'm an AV guy, so I know what's about to happen.
He's like, I think we might be in the same channel. I was like, oh man, I'm so sorry. I feel really bad. When's your show? And he's like, now. CEO of Cisco's up there right now, and she's really confused because her slides are going forward and backward. And I mean, we stopped it, we unplugged it, but could you not use that? he was so chill about it too. It was just like California, yeah, could you not do that then? So here, we'd taken the time to figure out the wireless microphone frequencies, but hadn't even thought about the fact that we're using the standard for presentation advancement on the other side of an air wall from a major presentation that was also using the standard wireless presentation remote. So I felt really bad about that because it's one of those hindsight, that was really obvious, that we should have checked that as well to make sure those things weren't on the same frequency.
That's a tough one. Oh my.
So gosh. Apparently I messed up the CEO of Cisco's presentation at a fairly major.
You just helped him get through it faster.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. All right, Brandt. So here's a good one that just came in. So we know that you have your own consulting business. So if you could tell us a little bit more about what you do with your business, and how and why did you start your own business? Because I know that there are a lot of independent planners who are watching the show today. And then if you have any tips for fledgling event business owners, you could share those.
I thought this song was fitting for this question, by the way.
Oh, it cut out.
Yeah, it cut out.
Yeah, the nice thing about consulting was kind of a nice umbrella, that it kind of covers a lot of things. I'm still doing a fair amount of freelance. So the company that I used to work for, I had become one of their primary show callers. So, calling out the queues and things like that for their larger corporate events. And I still do that for some of theirs for some of their events as a freelance, freelance technician. I do consulting both on the planner side of just kind of helping planners get into the right technology. I mean, there's a lot of planners out there. Their heads are just, I mean, there's 300, 400 different options for mobile apps and, audience response technology and all that kind of stuff, not even touching the AV. So, I try and start at the goal level. Okay, what are you trying to accomplish? And let's back our way into the technology and, just help them kind of figure out what's going to be the right technology for them. But pretty early on, I discovered there was also, you could speak in both directions. So if you can speak planner and you can speak geek, you can translate in both directions. So I started doing consulting for technology companies that were pitching to planners. And, kind of the kernel of that came from, I was speaking to one of the larger event app companies. This was a few years ago, but it was their brand new head of sales and their brand new head of marketing at at an industry event. And I'm sure they were phenomenal marketers and salespeople, but within 30 seconds, I could tell they didn't know anything about events. And so it was one of those things of like, okay, I'm sure you're really good at your jobs, but you also need to be able to speak to planners on a level that they're working at, and understand where they're coming from. And nobody cares that it's running on Ruby on Rails in the background. It's so you get this word salad of technology that's being thrown because it makes it sound important. And planners just want to know, how is it going to make my life better? How is it going to make my events better? How is it going to make my attendee experience better? And how is it going to help me show my bosses that I'm doing a good job and spending their money wisely? So, the all-important ROI. So, skip the word salad and, tell them what they're going to, how is your product going to help them, and do their jobs better? And then, like I said, freelance is just kind of, it's a nice umbrella. I've been working with technology companies as well, kind of helping be their on-site white glove service. So when you need someone to just be there, kind of hold the client's hand, make sure everything goes well, especially with audience response technology and things like that. Just make sure when things change like they do at the last minute, that the polling questions are changing and the schedules are changing properly in the apps and all that kind of stuff. So it's a nice umbrella. I like being on site. I mean, honestly, you asked, so why did I go out on my own? It was a crossroads moment. The company that I worked for laid out a perfectly legitimate career path that involved me staying in the office 8 hours a day in a dark room. And they wanted to expand their video production capabilities. And so I was doing a lot of their video editing, and that was a very legitimate career path, but it wasn't what I wanted to be. I like being on site. I think it's the theater background. You walk into an empty ballroom and you work your butt off for 2 days, and then you do this event that lasts like one night, and then you tear it all down and it's gone. And there's something kind of magical about that, I think.
Very magical.
Yeah.
I wish I had a better song I was going to have a song queued up for that one, but I don't have a magical song, so you guys can just imagine I played a magical song.
It is your destiny.
How's
It
that?
just blows my mind that you have all those. To go off script, I actually had a good question for you. It's one of my favorite questions to ask. I don't think I've ever asked a guest this question, so we might as well start with one of our hosts so
Bring
we
it.
can completely throw you off your game and you have no idea what to expect. So Peter Thiel actually asked this question to all of his entrepreneurs he invests in, as well as people he hires. So now it's one of my favorite questions ever. So if you had to name one truth that you believe in, but no one else does, what would be that one truth? So if there's a truth out there in the world that you believe in, but no one else does. So I'll give you an example, and it's not related to events at all, so feel free to make it really off topic. So mine is, and now it's taken because now I've told so many people believe in it too, but that short men is the biggest discriminated class that no one talks about. So, for example, on Tinder, dating website, girls will say, I'm 5'10". If you're not as tall as me, don't even give it a chance. So short guys are just like, you can have a great personality, you could be so nice, you could have a great career, you could be a great husband, all those things like that, but because you're tall, not even a chance. And it's an area that no one talks about. So that's my truth. Feel free to riff off that. So completely unrelated, but...
Yeah, I thought about not responding to you once I found out how tall you were. I have to admit, I did swipe the other way. No, that's a really tough question to just spring on someone at 9 minutes to the top of the hour. Or
You have 13 minutes. Don't worry.
Oh, I'm feeling very depressed.
there you go. I would say so, and this is I've talked about this publicly, so I don't know how surprising or anything that is, but I believe in being a generalist as opposed to a specialist. Being a generalist is way more fun. So I am not the best athlete, but I can play basketball. And so if a pickup game breaks out, I can play basketball. I am not a good ping pong player, but I can play ping pong. I am not a good, I'm not a great musician, but I can play music, and I enjoy playing music. It's one of the 3 things I get fired up the most about. And I get that pretty much directly from my grandfather. My grandfather was a generalist, knew a little bit about the stars, knew a little bit about electricity, knew a little bit about, he was a telephone guy, actually, when we actually had telephone guys, that would go up on, climb the, the telephone poles and work with wires, so that we can all communicate together. We had to string wires between our houses. It's incredible. And so I really do believe that there's something really kind of fun about being a generalist, because it lets you participate in any conversation. It lets you participate in any activity. You might not be awesome at it, but you can participate in it.
Cool.
And I'm trying to get my girls to kind of go the same way, that it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of this and a little bit of that is way more fun than just locking in on something and that's my thing.
Interesting. So I would I'd probably agree with you on that, because for example, I went to school for interdisciplinary studies. So literally business and special events management, how do you combine them? Like at that time I was already running the company, so I knew what I wanted to do. So basically, let's choose something I really love, business and special events, put them together. But they talked a lot about how really today's mindset is that you have to be able to take skills from multiple ways and look at things from a different angle using multiple skills. And we're in a multidisciplinary team kind of thing. Sure, you might be really good at this and you're combined with someone who's going to do this, but if you can understand enough, like you said, to be dangerous, it allows the process to work a little bit simpler. So I think that you're onto something there. So
well, it goes, one of the buzzwords, one of the fun things about our business, right, is we get to be on the inside of meetings. And, sometimes these big, financial companies and things like that. So hearing things on the inside. But one of the buzzwords is not only diversity, but diversity of thought, and making sure that we're actually getting diversity of thought. And that's, for me, that's kind of what being a generalist is, right, is being a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of this and a little bit of that lends you to more creative solutions when you need to, because you can pull from all these different, fields or whatever.
I love it.
I have a follow-up to that. Do you think that there's enough diverse voices that are out there educating planners?
No, because it's just me, and I'm a 40-year-old white guy, so it's not. No, we need more education in general. I mean, it's like I said, it's not being taught in a lot of the hospitality programs and event programs. So I would love to see more diversity, and that includes. And that diversity includes bringing in AV, I mean, so not just the nuts and bolts of chairs and centerpieces and how many people can you sit at a round versus chevron versus theater, but also, the audio visual bolts. So in general, and this is what, again, being kind of fun on the inside, is you see these megalith companies internally saying we need more diversity, not because it's a PR thing, but because they do understand that diversity of thought is going to give them a business advantage and give them a creative advantage. And so engineering companies, I'll never forget, it was a major aerospace company I was working on, where they were talking very heavily about diversity and what kind of benefits that is to an engineering solution. And using an ARS app, and this is kind of, for me, where the power of ARS comes in, they got an anonymous question saying, look, I'm uncomfortable with all this diversity that we're talking about here. How do I fit in to this? And the CEO, to his credit, jumped up and was like, maybe you don't, because this is a priority for us. It's a priority for us to have diversity in our company. And if that's a problem for you, then you might need to look somewhere else. which was an incredibly honest moment internally in a company. And so to me, that was a bit of learning the power of some of these audience response systems where you get that level of anonymity and then a very honest response from a C-level at the top that's prepared to do that kind of thing. That was a really long answer to say, yes, we should have more diversity. Sorry. Yeah. Sometimes I do get a little wordy.
Laura has a really great question from the audience.
Okay.
And this is 100% a real question.
All right.
Speaking of diversity, they say in the chat.
Speaking of diversity, because you like magic, will you be trying the Starbucks unicorn frappuccino?
Kelly should do it with a straight face too.
Whoa. Buckle your seatbelt, Dorothy.
There is no Starbucks Frappuccino Unicorn Coffee.
Apparently, according to the Twitter universe, it is real.
No.
And it changes colors.
It's only in your mind.
What?
Take the purple Frappuccino. Go down the rabbit hole. Let's see how far this ran.
Take the blue Frappuccino. Take the blue or the red Frappuccino. Okay.
What is your Starbucks drink, Brandt?
My Starbucks drink or my Starbucks name? Because that's another question, right?
Oh, that's a good one. I want to know both.
Yeah. So Starbucks drink, as I do like a chai tea latte. We do have a local coffee company called Caribou that I tend to frequent more. Caribou Coffee, but I like them more for their coffee, but unfortunately I do like the Starbucks chai tea latte a little bit better. It's a little spicier.
So weird, really.
I know, aren't I though?
Yeah.
And then I have to go with my middle name, Robert, because otherwise it's a 5-minute conversation of, and your name? Brandt. Brad, Brandt. Brett, Brandt. Brent, Brad. Brent, Brandt. Brent, Brad. Brent. I mean, so it's just I can just go, Robert. Okay, Robert, thanks, it'll be right up.
You ever get confused when your drink gets called and you're like, "Who's Robert?"
Who the hell?
My gosh.
No, but I was as part of the city council thing. It was a little weird because I was meeting someone, and so I'm sitting here with this coffee drink that says Robert on it, and obviously when you're running, it's really important to for people to know your name, because that's how they're gonna vote for you. So it was a little funny. So I had to try and make a joke about it. I was like, yeah.
So we're going to start introducing you as Robert Krueger.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. They're so concerned that the guy they're voting for steals Starbucks.
Right. He steals Starbucks, yes.
All right. So we're getting towards the top of the hour. Let's wrap up. Let's segue towards a wrap up. So you've given a lot of advice over the last 14,000 episodes you've been on the show. What would be your one tip for event planners this year that you haven't given before?
Yeah, well, I mean, these days, the biggest thing that I'm telling folks, and I don't think we've talked about it on this show. If we did, I apologize. But I mean, for 2017, I'm just saying this is the year to reevaluate. So if you were an early adopter, and you jumped right on mobile apps and online registration and attendee tracking and ARS and all that kind of stuff, now's the time to then now start looking at kind of the next generation stuff. But if you were the ones that are still holding out, going, well, I have an older audience, they're not going to want to do a mobile app, okay, largest growing demographic on Facebook is over 55 at this point, right? And that's all mobile. So that's not an excuse anymore. And all of these technologies are mature at this point. They've been around 5+ years, and many of them longer than you think, pushing 10 years. So those are all mature technologies. If you've been holding off for one reason or another, this is the year to get into it. And stop wasting time finding excuses not to do it. If you were on the bleeding edge, now's the time to start looking at the cutting edge stuff. What can we do with if you were on the cutting edge of like live streaming, what can we do to start pushing the edge with 360 streaming? Those kinds of things. That's already being tested. Just you think back 6 years ago, trying to strap together someone calling in remotely was pretty rough. But now we do that on a fairly regular basis, and here we are, 3 hosts in 3 totally different locations in the country. So what's the next horizon on that? 360. Event photography, okay, that goes to drones. But beyond drones, I'm seeing some wonderful things out of Europe, mainly because there's less regulation, using drones as decor. So decor, doing things where it's like a dolphin, that's just a, mechanized drones, going like this, making incredibly lifelike, realistic movements. Same with the stuff that Disney's doing with the Flixels that we saw at the Super Bowl, where the flying drones with just a, red, blue, and green LED creating basically a flying display. That technology exists now. Disney patented it almost 2 years ago, so that's and then they're talking about doing giant marionettes and all kinds of crazy things with drone technology. So there's all kinds of fun stuff coming down the way. So if you were on the bleeding edge, now's the time to start looking at virtual reality, augmented reality, drones, deeper tracking technologies. And if you've been holding off, now's the time to get into the stuff that's now mature technology. So that's my advice for 2017.
And you named a couple of resources to look into for, if people are trying to level up in 2017. Do you have any other resources that people should look into this year? Books, websites, new technologies that you think are new and interesting?
I don't have any scuba masks. I've got but I do have no. That's nothing interesting. But no. Honestly, I look at technology blogs because that stuff filters down. So, VR and AR were starting to be bubbling up already last year in those blogs, and it seems like it just kind of towards the end of last year and the beginning of this year, suddenly now that's filtering into events in a pretty big way. So that's what I personally try and do is just, if you are a podcast listener, try and find a nice general level podcast that's talking about technology. Like I said, I recommend the Twit Network, twit.tv. And so find those out. The Verge is a good online resource as far as technology goes. So technology-wise, that's what I go. I'll be honest with you, I struggle finding good AV resources other than Endless. So
I'll give you your $100 later.
Yeah, cheers. The check's in the mail. So Will's putting out great content as far as AV resources and things like that, and there are other AV companies that are doing that as well. So look for that information out there. I wish there were more. I honestly do, and so doing shows like this is kind of my little way of trying to encourage that and get that information out there, because I do wish there was more resources out there for kind of AV 101 type stuff. It's not geared towards AV people.
That's not geared towards AV people.
Right, because there's plenty of forums and boards and things like that are all hardcore AV folks, discussing that at a level way higher than anything a planner is going to need to know. So more geared specifically towards planners and venues.
I had 2 cool resources. I know I'm not the guest, but I wanted to share 2 timely resources that I had found over this last week. Speaking of ones that are kind of for planners, but probably not sort of for planners, primarily not designed for planners, but we were talking about it before the show. There's a great software called ShowFlow that helps you do your show calling, and we use it all the time at Endless. Brandt uses it all the time as well. It's kind of becoming the industry standard. They actually just started up their blog and reached out to me actually to chat a little bit more about it, so maybe we'll see them in the future with future episodes. But they just have an amazing blog where they actually interview show callers and producers to talk about what it's like producing a show, not necessarily like the production aspect, but like how do you actually have the show flow in the right way. And I'm using lots of their names, the things that they do, but how do you make it run really right? Great podcast, great blog. They have a great article on how to work on the road. For a lot of us production guys, we're constantly on the road, so how do you balance that with your life? Second, not completely random resource, more timely than anything, is if you're watching this right now, check out the coverage from the F8 conference. That's Facebook's big developer conference that just happened yesterday? Something like that. I blur all the days together. And Facebook made some massive announcements. Normally this doesn't affect the events industry very much because it's more about, hey, here, come check out this new feature. You can change your news feed. They announced a ton of stuff on augmented reality. They're pushing this as the year for the camera to become augmented reality, as well as virtual reality. They announced these cool chat rooms that you'll be able to put on a VR Oculus Rift and be in a room drawing with your friends and communicating and talking, and it's like they have an avatar of them. Really, really cool. So we're getting to that point of my favorite book, Ready Player One, where you're going to not have to be in person with people. So really important to watch that. Obviously not something that might get in planned events this year, but maybe a little bit later this year, maybe next year. But very, very important. They made some big changes to their messenger platform as well, which might be important for communication with attendees as well. So just wanted to plug that in there. So yeah, and of course, Laura, do you have any resources? I'm putting you on the spot. I apologize. Now she's looking at it.
Ooh, let's see. What have I been reaching for? I'll add them to the recap blog.
Recap blog. All right, so check out the recap blog. It's a great transition, Laura. We're gonna wrap up and recap this episode. It has been absolutely amazing. We had Mr. Brandt Krueger, our brand new host, on the show, and this is our new favorite song at Event Icons. So I wanted to get towards ending it with the show. But huge thank you, Brandt, for being on the show, for joining us as a co-host. We're so excited to have you. Big shout out to Laura Lopez, also co-hosting as well, holding strong, hanging in there. And huge shout out to Mr. Alex Plaxton as well, who works his thumbs off during the show, live tweeting the entire thing. And huge thank you to our entire audience. I promised that I'm going to do this more often, so I'm going to tell you guys a little bit more about next week's episode that we have coming up. If I can pull it up in time and remember exactly what it is. We were talking about how to get more from your presenters. So getting more from your presenters includes things like how can you get more value and engagement and excitement. You know, presenters are a huge part of corporate events, but this can also be applied to entertainers and other types of presentations that you're doing. So we're going to have an amazing panel discussing that and how can you get more from your presenters and have an amazing presentation. So that's going to conclude this week's episode of Hashtag Event Icons. Tune in next week, and we will see you guys then. Catch you guys all later.
Thank you for joining us for another amazing episode of Hashtag Event Icons. To catch the transcription and all of the resources mentioned, head to www.helloendless.com/blog. This week's episode will be posted and available by next Tuesday. Also, let us know what you thought about this week's episode. Share your biggest takeaway and join the Twitter conversation sponsored by Alex Plaxton and Little Bird Told Media. Just tag your post with Hashtag Event Icons. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you again for joining us. We'll see you next Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, right here on Hashtag Event Icons.